Happy anniversary, bud.
Happy birthday. Happy anniversary. It's so special for us that we get to do this actually on the anniversary, right? It was July 12th, 2021. We launched Attacking Third. You and I in our homes over Zoom, going live on YouTube, putting it out there as a podcast. And thank you to everyone in this community that has listened, whether you were here 2 years ago on July 12th, or this is your very first episode ever listening to us to talk about the World Cup. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We truly could not have done it without you. Sandra, I told you this morning, this show would not be what it is without you. So thank you for all you do. And happy birthday.
I love it. I feel the same way. I woke up this morning and I was like, we're going to celebrate 2 years of Attacking Third at CBS. And I'm just thrilled about that. But I'm mostly grateful that we've got to do all of this stuff together, like looking at some of the numbers, because that's what we do here on A3. We've also got numbers, just like when we're talking about games or player performances and things like that. But I love looking at some of this. We have 428 episodes that we've recorded together. We've covered 2 NWSL championships. We launched during the Tokyo Olympic Games, and we're about to cover a World Cup. I'm so thrilled. And I think what I've really enjoyed the most is working alongside you and kind of like growing our little community here. So shout out to everyone wishing us happy anniversary, happy birthday. We appreciate you all so much as well. And we're happy to be here with you.
Yeah. It's so special. As you mentioned, 428 episodes. And I did a little math. You know how I get with my stats sometimes, Sandra. We originally launched as 3 times a week. That's what our goal was. We're going to go 3 times a week and talk about women's soccer. If we did 3 times a week only for 2 years, that would have been 314 episodes. But we have an additional 114 extra episodes that we have gone live for, put out as a podcast, whether they were extra interview episodes or emergency episodes or breaking news or recap episodes that went live right after a US game. That's a lot of content that we have put out there. Insane. It is crazy to think about. We've covered World Cup qualifiers. We've done live shows, a number of different live shows, whether they were at the NWSL Championship or at the WCONCACAF launch party. So many amazing things that we have done. And it started with just a handful of pilot episodes before CBS said, hey, you know what? This is pretty good. You guys got something good here. Let's make it real and live. So thank you. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to you, Sandra, because we turned 2 today.
Yeah, the duo turns 2. I can wipe my eyebrow thinking about those pilot episodes. We were doing rehearsals and going over and practicing and doing rundowns and saying, this is how we would like it to be. Don't you think this is cool enough to support? And thankfully, CBS said, absolutely. Yeah.
And thanks to all of the guests, anyone that we've had on as a guest, whether Sandra was missing or I was missing, or we had 3 people on, 4 people on, shout out to those people because they made it pretty fun as well.
100%. Look, we've had a ton of interviews. We've had a ton of guests. We've had a lot of like memorable moments. I gotta ask, what are some of the ones that stick out for you that you kind of like to revisit from time to time?
We have had some incredible interviews, whether it was NWSL first draft picks that came into it, whether it was a special one for me for sure. It was when we went to Angel City and we got to do a live show. And this one is also out there as a podcast and on YouTube. And we got to interview Kristen Press, playing for Angel City in Los Angeles. That was last year. That was massive. That gave me a lot of chills for sure. There are so many good ones. When Bay FC, now known as Bay FC, and going to be the 13th or 14th NWSL club in the league, when they first announced bring NWSL to the Bay, we chatted with Allie Wagner, former U.S. women's national team star, and also Brandi Chastain. And we did that interview. You and I were at our homes like we usually are. Allie was in her beautiful home in California. And Brandi Chastain took this interview with us from a soccer field. Like it was ain't no thing. She's sitting in like like a fold up soccer chair. And she's like, hey guys, I'm just watching a lot of games. I'm at a tournament right now. Let's do this interview. It was fantastic. It was great. And they talked about bringing a club team to the Bay Area and the NWSL, and all the while, clearly she is just bleeding soccer. You can tell it's her life because she's literally surrounded by it. There's whistles, there's yelling. It's a really good one. It's a really good one with Brandy Chastain and Allie Wagner.
I love that there's just like in that episode you could just see like kids just like running around and playing soccer. No, those are all up there for me too. Whether it was the pre-interviews before it became Bay FC, the Angel City collaboration, chatting with Kristen Press, and the launch of one of the new lines. Like we got a little bit of swag. That was cool too. And like that kind of stuff is always really fun to me. Whenever we have interviews with players and they get a chance to talk about the things that are important to them or that they're passionate about or that they're working on that are things that are off the pitch. And it's nice to sort of bring all that together on the show. But it's also really like, I love that we've been able to kind of utilize A3 as a platform at times. I mean, one of my favorite ones, and this is a bit of a throwback, is our interview with Cedella Marley and everything that she's been working on and doing with Jamaica's women's national team, the Reggae Girls, who are going to their second World Cup. And while it's disheartening to know that like leading into this, they are still, unfortunately having to deal with some lack of funding and resources and things as they prep for their second tournament, to have that interview and have all that on record and like know that this has been an ongoing process is like a little bit of I don't want to say it's a bookend, but it's like a little moment where you can look at and say, hey, this has actually been an ongoing thing. Like there have been folks who have like pointed to the interview or the write-up that I did of it as like a point of reference. And it's just wild to think about how some of the work and some of the content that we do kind of exists like that in the space. And so I'm very grateful to folks who want to come on the show and maybe talk about things that aren't going to be so, happy-go-lucky or butterflies and sunshine, that maybe sometimes there's still a lot of work that has to be done behind the scenes. So I'm very grateful for anyone who comes on the show and has interviews like that. So shout out to Cedella Marley and and we had a ton of interviews around the CBA as well. That's
what I was going to say. Like Tori Huster, president of the Players Association. Megan came on. We had Jessica Berman, the commissioner of the league, come on. We had so many different players around the CBA and the signing of it come on and talk to us about it and what it means. Yale, Averbush West at Gotham, and Lori Lindsay talked about that as well. We've had very special moments.
It's crazy to think about, like just running it down right now with you, because we were chatting about it just briefly before we went live, and like that's how it's real, because it's just sort of pouring out of us right now. We're bringing up things that we didn't even like touch on before, and just thinking about it brings a smile on our faces, and it's been a blessing.
It's very like kismet that this 2-year anniversary is just days before we cover the World Cup, 8 days. And when you look at how many players in the NWSL are going to the World Cup, we've interviewed a number of them as well, like not just big moments and the CBA and Cedella Marley, but like Casey Murphy, Alana Cook, Lynn Williams, Rose Lavelle. The list goes on. Naomi Girma, Sophia
Alex Morgan.
Like we have interviewed so many players. Sam Ewis, we interviewed her. I know she's not going to the World Cup, but as part of our Title IX coverage that we did. Like there are just so many interviews that we've done. So if you're looking for any content with US players, NWSL players, World Cup content, we've probably talked to them. We talked to Savannah DeMello as a rookie last year and kind of how she was able to take the NWSL by storm. And now she's going to her first World Cup. Massive. Go check out some of those interviews because they're really good.
Absolutely. I love that you're touching on some of these NWSL players, because we have to talk about that as well. There's a ton of NWSL players who are heading to the Southern Hemisphere who are really there already in order to prepare for the upcoming group stage in the World Cup. But we want to celebrate that alongside the league, because there are 60 players who will represent NWSL clubs in the 2023 World Cup. There are 28 of them that are headed to their first ever international tournament. Amazing. I am just like, wow.
It is truly incredible. This is the largest number of NWSL players that have ever been at the World Cup, representing half of the teams or that are going, or with 32 teams going, right? Like that's kind of where it gets interesting. But every single club is represented, 12 clubs. And when you look at the US roster, right, I think that's where a lot of people's minds go first. Of the 23 players, 22 of them play in the NWSL, with the one exception of midfielder Lindsay Horan, who plays for Lyon. But nearly half of the competing nations have NWSL representation. And the fact that this is the largest Women's World Cup with expansion to 32 nations playing, and half of them have NWSL representation is massive. And that number was growing up until like just a few days ago, when NWSL clubs were making signings and they were adding new players in. You look at Mariana Larroquette with Orlando, who's been in the NWSL before, but now she's back. She'll be representing Argentina. I mean, there's so many different ones, but it is incredible. And so a lot of familiar faces for people listening to this episode and joining us live. When you're watching the World Cup, that maybe you've just been focused on the Americans or the U.S. Women's National Team, but you're a big NWSL fan, there's going to be familiar faces across the entirety of the tournament that you can not only watch and get familiar with and understand how they play, but also cheer for them a little bit, because teams have to get out of their group stages. They need people cheering for them. So find some NWSL players, go cheer for their nation.
I love that there's so many clubs that are going to be represented in this tournament, and that they are also going to be represented across so many different international squads as well. Like you mentioned, the 22 players for the United States women's national team. Yes, that's the bulk of them, but I love that there are so many NWSL Canadians that are going to be involved in this upcoming World Cup. There's going to be so many NWSL Brazilians within this tournament as well. Australia, Costa Rica, even Denmark as well. The list goes on and on and on. Ireland's going to be represented, the Reggae Girls as well. Japan. It's just like you can go down and just really find so many different countries within these 60 players that will represent NWSL, as well as their respective international teams.